Hello there, Stevos. Welcome back to a movie wrap-up video. Firstly, if you're watching this in real time, apologies for the delay. I've been pretty busy this afternoon, and it's only taken me until now, literally 15 minutes before the normal upload time, for me to actually film this video on this Sunday afternoon. So I do apologise, but, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, and also as well, for those asking about the thumbnails as well, don't worry, I'm getting on to them as well, okay? I've been a bit slacking on the thumbnails on my YouTube videos, my weekly vlogs and the movie wrap-ups and stuff. Do apologise. I'm going to get onto that as soon as possible. Hopefully by the time my next weekly vlog comes out, which is Monday the 2nd of June 2025, the thumbnails should all be sorted and all up to date, so we'll see how that pans out. Anyway, as for now though, let's have a look and see what movies I've been watching this week, over this past week, here on my movie wrap-up video, right here on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. It's bloody hot as well, by the way. You're watching Steve's Movie Wrap-Up, episode 70, right here on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. The first movie we'll be reviewing in this episode is Popeye's Revenge. By the way, I'm talking about Popeye's Revenge, but I've just realised this week's movie wrap-up video is all about low-budget horror films. All 4 films that I've watched this week are all low-budget horror films. So we're starting off with Popeye's Revenge, 1.5 star over on Letterboxd. Recently I have purchased a few horror movies on digital, and some of those horror movies are indeed low-budget horror movies. Popeye's Revenge is one of those low-budget horror movies, which is produced by ITM Productions, the same ITM Productions that is currently doing the Puniverse movies. I believe this is a movie that is outside of the Puniverse, so don't expect Popeye to be showing up in the Puniverse Monsters Assemble movie when that gets released. So as for Popeye's Revenge, what did I think about this movie? Well, like most low-budget horror movies, this is just slop. While I appreciate buying this movie on digital because, after all, Popeye is a well-known, well-established cartoon character from years gone by, and I'm sure most of us have seen a cartoon from Popeye back in the day. I think I remember seeing a few when I was a kid, and for those who don't know who Popeye is, he is a sailor who loves eating tins or cans of spinach. Was there any sign of spinach in this movie? There wasn't, although I think they did at one point reference it in the movie. Were the characters likeable? Not really. These were characters that we clearly should not care about, and I didn't. I think the only character out of them all I really liked was Tara, and that was about it. The rest of them were just rather insufferable, and I just couldn't wait for their deaths to happen on screen. The thing is about low-budget horror movies, and the more I watch them, the more I come to realise this, but there seems to be way more intimate scenes between characters, or sex scenes between characters, than you would find in any other horror movie. I don't know if this is intentional or not, I have no idea, but it's something that I have come to terms with. Almost feels like at times you are just watching porn with added elements of horror to it. How was the dialogue in this film, I hear you ask? Absolutely terrible, by the way, and the way that some lines were delivered and the way how it was acted out, it just didn't feel natural at all, to be honest. And as for the opening sequence, it went on for far too long, and even in that opening scene, when within the first 5 minutes of the film, a sex scene happens. Also, I remember them doing this with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, where they told a story about the characters and what happened to them prior to the events of the movie. Well, Popeye's Revenge is no different. Tells us the story of Popeye, who was known as Johnny growing up and had deformities as well, which caused him to be bullied in school, went on a violent rampage, but all of that story was told with the use of animation, the same style animation that they used in Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. As for the running time, the film does clock in at 1 hour 20 minutes, and to be honest, I don't blame them for the short running time. It was simple and easy to watch, and with them having a low budget as well, they didn't have enough budget to make this movie any longer, but I feel as though if it had gone on any longer, then I would have been switched off and not too interested in seeing how things end. There is also a scene where a character gets burned alive, but when you see them on fire, it's just really poorly looking fire, like CGI'd in, and then cut to a shot of two of the surviving characters, and we see a real fire going on in front of them, which I found rather odd. Also, speaking of fire, there was another scene within this movie where we see one character get into a car, unable to start the car. Popeye comes along and turns the car sideways with the person inside the car, and we see the fuel coming out of the tank. Popeye stands a little far from the car and then uses a lighter to torch the car, but as the flames makes its way up to the car before exploding, we see a shot where the victim's phone starts pinging with loads of notifications before the car explodes with them inside, which I did find funny, and if you saw the scene in question, I think you would also snigger at that as well. I feel as though there was some inspiration behind this movie taken from Friday the 13th. You know how it was said in those movies that Jason Voorhees died in a lake when he was a child. Well, they went for the same theme with Johnny/Popeye in this film. Oh, and yes, Olive Oil, Popeye's wife, appears in the film. However, they changed it from Olive Oil being his wife to being his sister. Why did they need to change that concept? I will never understand. Is Popeye's Revenge a film that I am going to remember? Well, yes and no. I did watch it all the way through. I probably would put this on again as background noise. But above all else, I didn't think I would be in any rush to rewatch this again. But just for the fact that they turned a famous cartoon character into a horror character, just for that concept, sometimes it is worth me watching these kind of films just to have a laugh over them. Would I recommend this film to the horror community? Well, if you enjoy low-budget horror, then sure, check this one out. But if you don't, then I wouldn't waste your time. There isn't anything original about the kills in here, unfortunately, and I really wish there was, to be honest, because that is what would have made this film more enjoyable to watch and view. Popeye's Revenge, however, is available to buy and rent over on digital platforms. Popeye the Slayer Man. And then we go from Popeye's Revenge to Popeye the Slayer Man, which I gave 2 stars on Letterboxd. I hate the fact that I am likely to do a side-by-side comparison and compare this to the other recent low-budget Popeye horror movie I have watched, which is Popeye's Revenge, but both these movies were released on digital here in the UK around the same time, and as I have now watched both movies, I might as well compare the two. For starters, I have given this one an extra half a star rating compared to Popeye's Revenge, which does mean I did somewhat enjoy this slightly more than I did watching Popeye's Revenge. I will be honest, this one marginally is more watchable than Popeye's Revenge is. Both movies feature Popeye as the horror villain, of course, but in Popeye's Revenge, Popeye lives in a cabin or in a remote location, whereas in Popeye the Slayer Man, Popeye is currently living out in an abandoned warehouse where they used to make cans or tins, likely to be tins of spinach. More on that in a moment, by the way, but there are some important people who want to bulldoze the factory down and turn it into apartments. After all, the factory is abandoned, and the company behind it, of course, want to make some money with the land that they own. Speaking of spinach just now with this movie, and this movie doesn't just show us one tin of spinach as a reference, and that's it. Unlike Popeye's Revenge, this movie does make use of the spinach by making out that the spinach is contaminated, which is why Popeye is in this movie is violent and is on a rampage. Yes, similar to Popeye's Revenge, Popeye in Popeye the Slayer Man is also deformed as well, but that's because of all the contaminated spinach Popeye has been eating. We do find out that Popeye's wife, Olive Oil, used to work for the factory, but she has gone missing. Her and Popeye did have a kid together. I am glad that they said that Olive Oil was his wife in this movie, because in Popeye's Revenge, Olive Oil was Popeye's sister, so it wasn't entirely cartoon accurate or lore accurate. There are the odd death scenes within this movie that are somewhat Final Destination-esque in a way, but on a smaller budget though, sorry. But the gore in this, you can tell, was made on a much more lower budget, but still somewhat decent though. You just knew there was some bits of blood and gore where it did seem really fake. Saying that, there was a couple of times where Popeye would just bend a victim's hand back, snapping their wrist, and the first time he did that to one victim, it was fine, but then the more he did that, though, it just became repetitive, bland, and boring. The running time for Popeye the Slayer Man is 1 hour 28 minutes compared to just 1 hour 20 minutes for Popeye's Revenge, but this does also end on a cliffhanger as well, so there is likely a chance that a sequel could be in the works and could be released somewhat in the near future, especially as it seems as though they have only told half the story within the movie. Would it interest me to see a sequel to this? I think so, because I would love to know where they are going and where they will take the story next. Will it be set in the same location as this one? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Do I recommend this to the horror community to watch? If you are into low-budget horror movies, then sure, give this a watch or add it to the watch list. And if you get a chance, give this a watch. But I would say out of the two movies I've now seen, Popeye the Slayer Man is more watchable than Popeye's Revenge. And that's only by a margin. I would say that this is rewatchable as well. But I think if I was to put this on again in the future, it would just purely be for background noise and background noise only. I would also say that the characters are somewhat likeable too, but there are the odd couple of characters though that weren't so likeable, and you were rooting for them to be killed. Popeye the Slayer Man is available to buy and rent over on digital platforms. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, I gave 2.5 stars over on Letterboxd. If I was a horror fan right now, I definitely would not sleep on this one, that is for sure. I had a really enjoyable time with Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, and it didn't feel like a low-budget horror movie at all. It did in a way, though, kind of feel like a more low-budget version of The Black Phone. And I will be honest, Martin Putlock, who plays Peter Pan in this horror movie, did somewhat remind me of Heath Ledger's version of the Joker in Batman The Dark Knight at the start of the film. There is some decent kills in this. The gore in this was also really good, and like I said before, it does seem like this movie was given more of a budget. The production company behind this movie, ITM Productions, are known for making Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2, Popeye's Revenge, and also the upcoming low-budget horror movies Bambi the Reckoning and Pinocchio Unstrung. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare is also classed as being part of the Pooniverse, so I am sure we can next expect the character to appear in the upcoming Assemble movie, Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. I will say, and I don't know whether this was intentional or unintentional, but at the beginning of the movie, Peter Pan was talking to this kid from under the floorboards. It did kind of remind me of Evil Dead, a character talking to the other characters from under the floorboards, but also it felt as though Peter Pan was doing his best impression of Pennywise from the It movies, especially speaking about balloons in order to get the kid to trust him and be more closer to him as well. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare does have a running time of 1 hour 30 minutes, and I do think it's a nice, simple and easy horror movie to watch that doesn't outstay its welcome, which is good. Do I recommend Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare to the rest of the horror community? As I said at the beginning of this review, definitely don't sleep on this horror movie because it is one of the more decent and better low-budget horror movies I have seen in recent times. And also this is one that I can see myself going back and rewatching again from time to time. But Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare is available to buy and rent over on digital platforms right now. Screamboat. And finally this week I have watched Screamboat, which I gave 2 stars on Letterboxd. I know that this movie probably does get a lot of hate on Letterboxd, but I am in the minority of people that did somewhat enjoy the film. And at the same time wanted to dislike this film as well, because hate is such a strong word. And so therefore, because I did somewhat like this movie and went for a different word that was more nicer than hate. Hence why I use the word dislike. So what did I like about the film Screamboat? Well, it's another one of those horror movies, the low budget horror movies where you just can't take it too seriously. Similar to when I watched the Popeye horror movies or the Winnie the Pooh horror movies. The concept behind it is so weird and bizarre, especially if you have grown up during your childhood years with these characters, to then seeing them cause carnage and bloodbaths later on in your life when you have become a fully grown adult and are into and love watching horror movies. It's just a weird concept. David Howard Thornton did a great job at portraying the antagonist, Steamboat Willie. And yes, this is the same actor who you have seen play Art the Clown in the Terrifier franchise, the Grinch in the Christmas-themed horror movie, The Mean One, and he played a character in another horror movie that came out in 2024 titled Stream. I did like some of the gore and some of the kills in this, and the way how Steamboat Willie portrays those kills as well with the delivery of them is rather comedic at times. I just don't think I could really take this movie too seriously. I will say that you have some dumb characters in here as well, which I knew that would happen, and I knew I wouldn't care about them if they got killed. And did I care about them? Of course I didn't. There was a death scene in here actually that was so funny. I honestly thought I was watching Scary Movie because it just felt like a parody. It was a cool death scene, don't get me wrong, and rather brutal, but it just felt like a parody of something you would see in a more serious horror movie. The running time for Screamboat clocks in at 1 hour 43 minutes, and I will say that by the end of the film it does set itself up for a potential sequel, and I do believe is currently in development. All I can tease is that there is another mouse similar to David Howard Thornton's character, but this mouse is in a dress. I swear now, there has been a couple of these low-budget horror movies that I have seen which have set itself up for a potential sequel, which is either in development now as we speak, or just in the works and something we can see in the future sometime. What I didn't like about Screamboat, firstly, as mentioned, was the characters, but secondly, as well, some of the music. There was one piece of music which started from the beginning of the movie to, I believe, halfway through the movie, and it really did bug me, to be honest. It was just so repetitive at times and annoying as well, and the music also went alongside some really annoying characters who I really couldn't give a toss about as well. Is Screamboat a movie I would recommend to the horror community? Well, like the rest of the low-budget horror movies I have seen, if you enjoy them, then sure, check this one out. If you are a fan of David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown in the Terrifier franchise, then again, definitely check this one out as well, even if it is just the one watch once and once only. Is this a movie I can see myself rewatching and revisiting? Yeah, it is likely to be filled in the background as background noise and something I can just watch every now and then when it's on TV. And will I be checking out the sequel when that does come out? Of course I will. I probably will end up and I probably will end up watching it and interested to see where they take the story next. But as for now, though, Screamboat is available to buy and rent over on digital platforms. And that is all for this week's episode of the Movie Wrap Up. Thank you for watching. Please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section down below. And as always, if you are new around here, you like what you see, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below to become a Stevo. I'll be back on Monday, the 2nd of June, 2025, 4 PM UK time, with my next episode of the weekly vlog, and back Sunday the 7th of June 2025 at 4 PM UK time with my next episode of the Movie Wrap Up right here on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. Until then though, it's goodbye, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys again in my next YouTube video.